welcome to At the Bench, the physician scientist neonatology podcast. My name is Ben Fensterheim. You may have remembered my face from a recent interview where I was being asked the questions. Now I have the privilege to ask them to a fantastic up and coming physician scientist, Kristen Noble. Um, so before we get into that, I'm going to pass it over to my co-host, Betsy Crouch, to go over the next steps.
Awesome. Ben, congrats on your promotion.
Promotion to instructor.
Yeah,
Yes, I made it from the fellow to instructor.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
thanks for the congrats. I'm still looking for the next step, but
yeah, aren't we all? But I
yeah.
think more specifically, congrats on your promotion here at the bench from
Oh, that too. Actually,
The
yeah,
important one, clearly.
yeah, that is the important promotion.
yeah, I think as probably the listeners can tell from the vibe, it's a really fun group here. We're all earlier in our career. Ben is an instructor, and our guest today, Dr. Kristen Noble, is an assistant professor at Indiana University in the Division of Neonatology. And we're delighted to get to talk to you about what's going on with you and your research program. And as our listeners know, I'm Betsy Crouch, and I'm also an assistant professor at the University of California, San Francisco. But I'm happy to say that I'll be transitioning to associate this summer. So moving along.
Amazing.
Thank
Congrats.
you. Yeah, Kristen, thanks for being here. Do you want to take over and tell us a little bit about your research program and what's driving you these days?
Absolutely. So I'm really excited to be here. I've known actually Betsy and Ben for a little while now. So it's exciting to get to reconnect. So I'm Kristen Noble, as Betsy mentioned, already mentioned my title, but I'm here at Indiana University. Have been here now for just a year and a half. Transitioned after training and staying at Vanderbilt for a few years on faculty there, and moved my lab here. And by my lab, I mean me. I'm here to Indiana to really study how the timing of gestation affects intrauterine immune responses to infection. So we're developing mouse models and trying to use human tissues as well to hopefully really soon have like an atlas of transcriptomic and proteomic um, descriptions of how the intrauterine tissues respond to infection at multiple time points during pregnancy. So we're really excited about the opportunity to do that here at Indiana.
I'm so excited to talk about this with you. And I have to say that I was reading a bunch of GBS stuff, in preparation for our interview and just remembering how essential that infection particularly has been to our understanding and our impact on neonatal health. And there's still so much to do.
So much. Yeah, absolutely.
I guess to get started, would you mind telling us a little bit about, your background and what inspired you to become a neonatal physician scientist?
Yeah, sure. So, um, I it's an interesting start to the story. So I'm gonna start all the way back in undergrad. All right, that's where we
Awesome.
all start. Yeah. Um, I I had the chance to do this class as a senior actually in college, and it was um a, a seminar on how to read like primary literature. And I tried to get into a research lab as like an undergrad and couldn't. Unfortunately, actually the instructor passed away the summer before I was going to start, and I couldn't. But I think that was like the first chance had to be exposed to understanding that as much as you think growing up, we know everything about science and medicine, because there is that sort of pervasive thought in the general community. You start to realize that there are very fundamental, basic things that people are studying. And the questions we're asking, the most interesting questions seem to be those really fundamental, basic how do things work? From, um, you know, how do cells talk to each other in different situations? How something like infection would change that communication? Like those things are things I just thought, oh, of course we know that. We're so advanced in science, and that was my first introduction to really realizing, like, oh wait, we don't know anything. um, and so at the time I was on this trajectory to be thinking about med school. and actually met with everybody had to meet with their like med school pre-med advisor to get a letter of recommendation for med school. And that was the worst meeting of my life. I met with him and he told me I was not doctor material and that I should think about doing something else. And if I wanted to be in medicine, then I should think about being a technician of some sort. An X-ray tech is what he mentioned to me, or whatever, something else. I was not going to be a doctor. Sounds
Have
pretty.
you sent him some of your papers?
No, I did not.
Or
Uh,
your K award, which
yeah, no. So that actually, though, right? Those are those times in your life that are you're really vulnerable and you're young, right? You're like 20, right? And I'm like, oh my God, this man knows exactly what he's talking about. I'm never going to be a doctor. And so I went back home after undergrad. I didn't even apply. And got a job, one of my 3 jobs at the time, in a neuroscience lab at Case Western. So I went home, I moved back into my mom. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing with my life now. So I knew I was still from that class as a senior really interested in science. So I was like, let me just try. Maybe I can be a research assistant. So I did that for a year. I in the meantime met some really fantastic people at Case who talked me through kind of the trauma of that initial meeting and convinced me that that was ridiculous and that I should just try. And so I did apply to medical school. I only applied to 2 medical schools, and I got a call from Meharry and said, "We'd love to have you come." And so I did. I didn't even know that MSTP programs existed at the time, because yeah, I had no idea. I didn't even know what they were. Um and what I ended up doing, though, was going during my first year of med school, going and talking to the head of the graduate school about opportunities that might be available to medical students for doing research, basic science research. And at the time, she told me about the Vanderbilt MSTP had saved 2 spots for Meharry students to potentially join. You still had to interview, like, with the normal MSTP class and be accepted into that program, but those spots were saved for 2 Meharry students, and they were actually having, I think, a challenging time getting some uptake from that. Shockingly, a lot of med students don't wanna add on however many extra years to do grad school that it may take. Yeah, it's crazy, I don't know. So I did that. I applied to the MSCP and I was accepted. There were some hiccups with timing and funding, and thanks to Terry Dermody and Susan Wente, who later became my mentor, they worked it out magically and things just sort of took off from there. So yeah, that's how
I think
I
that's fascinating as someone who also trained in the Vanderbilt MSTP system because I had a similar experience, not maybe not quite as traumatic as your experience, but I also had a significant amount of doubt given to me by others that I was going to be able to succeed. And it was actually
Mhm.
through the Vanderbilt system
Yep.
that I regained some confidence.
Mhm.
Um, I wonder, like, how were you when you got accepted and all this kinda came around and you were double doctoring training all of a sudden, how did that influence your perception of your career and yourself or
Yeah, great question. Because actually I went to undergrad at Vanderbilt, and that is
Oh,
where the
oh,
pre-med
not a
advisor
case,
told
yeah.
me I would not be
Oh,
a
yeah.
doctor.
You just had to get out of the undergrad.
So so mixed emotions, and I will say too, it was interesting being a Meharry student at Vanderbilt because there's a lot historically going on there. Um, because the first person I met when I sort of started rotations over there said something like, "Oh, we're so glad you've been given this opportunity to be here. What a great chance you have." And the assumption was like that I still wasn't like good enough to be there, that it was just this like, "Oh, this sort of like we're just going to give you this shot because it's the thing to do kind of. So what I will say is the person I think that really changed really like poured confidence into me is probably Susan Wente and Terry Dermy. Those two people, I will say that. Like I cannot say enough about the two of them. They were instrumental. I will tell everybody that I have ever met in helping me move past that and really helping me stay focused on understanding that like everybody starts from somewhere and you have obviously you're obviously good enough to be here right now, and so let's think about how we're gonna move forward with your career. And once the two of them sort of enter the picture, yeah, their support and excitement about the science and excitement about the potential of my future career are really what helped me start to understand that, like, okay, this is something I can do. It's feasible, which I still think about to this day because there are times, as we all know, like where imposter syndrome kind of creeps in. I know that's like the buzzword of the century, but I the best advice I got from them too was moving forward to, think about mentorship in a way that I hadn't as an undergrad. I didn't know what a mentor was really, but to really try to align myself with people that were interested in me as a person and my career outside of how it would affect theirs. And so I really took that to heart, and, I think that's helped me now find even now like, the mentor I have right now, the first meeting I had with him and I was like, "Oh, I'm never leaving you. You're stuck with me for life." The first meeting I had with Dave Aronoff, he said, "I'm really excited to get to work with you. I really hope you decide to join our lab." This was when I was a fellow, at Vanderbilt, and he said, "My job as a mentor is to make sure that you succeed." He's like, "If you come into our lab and the project that is the main project in my lab, if that is the project that really resonates with you and you take off with that, then you take that and it's my job as a mentor to, like, find something else to do." Like, that is his perspective on mentorship, and I mean, I think that is very rare and, he's the type of person I think that can do that, but yeah, but I
Yeah,
think,
I mean,
like, the
that makes
mentorship
sense
along the way.
as and I've met all these folks too, and it's like
Yeah.
you really have aligned yourself with the right people, and I think it demonstrates how successful you've been is that that
Mhm.
strategy is working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
This is so fun, I think, to be with a group of earlier stage folks where it's not like, "Hey, I'm a great mentor."
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
have interviews with outstanding mentors who can talk, about their philosophy, like you just gave your mentor's philosophy. But it's also useful to hear the other side, which is just like, this is how this catalyzed the rest of my career.
Yeah.
Just to emphasize the point that I think we all have to overcome challenges. I switched graduate school programs when I was an MSTP, and when I met with the previous, you know, grad school program director to tell him that I was switching programs, his comment to me was, "Well, it's clear that you're not capable enough to handle this grad school program." Um, and, I now have a PhD from Columbia in health science, but, I think that those stories are unfortunately common, and you did a phenomenal job of, like, recalibrating, to find people, um that were that had better insight, I think,
Yeah.
into what was actually going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you for sharing. That was very,
Yeah.
meaningful. Cool. So, okay, so you're going along, you find your mentor who's, now your mentor. Were there any clinical observations that you had that, inspired your interest in infection and pregnancy and early life outcomes?
Yeah. So I think the main thing that really, like, through first year fellowship, which is when you're sort of starting to look for a mentor, and I started trying to do that pretty early, so I knew, what I wanted my career to look like. But one thing that really struck me is, as on the neonatology side, we have a lot of interaction with MFM and OB. And a lot of that interaction is obviously with pregnant people that come to the hospital with some sort of threatened pregnancy, whether that's preterm delivery or preeclampsia or whatever the case may be. And we're involved in consulting. We go talk to the moms and we talk about, what would happen if your baby needed to be delivered soon. What's interesting is that that whole process is so reactionary. We only know when there's a problem once the problem's already started. We have almost no, early indications of a pregnancy that's going to be in trouble. And um, there a lot of decisions are made just to try to extend the length of the pregnancy, right? We know being born premature alone with no other complications causes lots of things downstream. But a lot of our clinical practice exists around let's just keep this infant, this fetus inside the mom or the pregnant person for as long as we can because that should be a better outcome until it's dangerous for the fetus or the pregnant person. But we don't know what's going on in there, right? We don't really have a good way of knowing when does the balance tip between it's better to get baby out and deal with the consequences of prematurity versus stay in and give more time for maturity? We don't have any biomarkers. We don't have a lot of clinical data to help us make that decision. And it's very much like you get to the brink of when something bad might happen, and then you make this decision to deliver. And it's fascinating because if we had some way of better monitoring, like, is it really better to leave this particular fetus inside of mom in this situation just to get more time, but we're really exposing this fetus to some horrible bout of inflammation or a specific type of inflammation or a specific type of stress that really is going to make the outcomes worse as opposed to just being born a week or two earlier. And especially that happens when you're getting close to, the early 20 weeks, in pregnancy. And, that strikes me as an opportunity that is ripe um, we just need better ways to understand what's going on inside of that pregnant person in this threatened pregnancy, on the front end where we can make more informed decisions about when is appropriate to help deliver, when it's appropriate to help deliver that fetus.
There's so many recent clinical scenarios that this brings up, for me. Uh, yeah, it's really tough, and, there's a baby who's being delivered because the mom has choreo or the mom is actively spiking fevers, and
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
expecting the baby to be quite in distress, and the baby does fine. And the flip scenario where maybe there's a little bit of something and, for some reason you move toward delivery and then the baby is really in distress and, and you feel terrible that there were no early indicators for what we can currently monitor.
Yeah, and there are times in fellowship when we would get calls from MFM like, "Hey, here's the situation. What do you think? What are baby's chances?" Right? I'm like,
Yeah.
we'll see when the baby gets here, right? And that's the counseling that we have to give families. Like, here are things we can expect, or here's a potential scenario. The breadth of what that could be is so wide. And it's just a guessing game until the baby's delivered, and then you just have to deal with whatever you get.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
mean, I
feel like
guess Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ben.
no, I was just gonna comment that, like, we are so limited in what we have. We use when I if someone were to ask me a question, I would have the age, the gestational age, and the weight,
Yep.
and that's about what I could tell you.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's true.
That
that's it.
right? Like, there are
Yeah.
so many other things that could be predictive
Mhm,
to or allow us to make that decision, and
mhm.
especially when you are talking about that younger cohort, every day can make a difference in an
Yeah,
infant. If you choose to deliver early, when things could have been go further, or
yeah.
if
Wait.
you extend the pregnancy and you
Mhm,
allow for things like inflammation or other
mhm.
hemodynamic processes to evolve, yeah, you really could change, something, and I've been struck by that from a research perspectives too. Why are 2 different infants born with the exact same gestational age have so many different outcomes? Part of it's clearly genetics, but
Yeah,
there's a big environmental component or a real-time component
yeah,
for
and I
this,
think the
so
most
I think it's
striking one
fascinating.
the most striking one is the one that we don't think about the most, like, what if we had delivered earlier? Would we have had a better outcome than just waiting, right? I think we think a lot about, "We should have delivered earlier, oh, no." But what if we or sorry, yeah, or we should have waited, sorry, is what I meant. But, like, what if we could have delivered earlier? And maybe even though we lost a couple of days or a week even, like, would we have had a better outcome? And, that's sort of what led me down the path of really thinking about, like, what do we understand about what's happening in the intrauterine environment, at any given gestational age, just at baseline, because that changes so rapidly, especially when you start thinking about immune responses to inflammation, whether that's infection or the other reasons for inflammation in the uterus. Like, what do we know about, um, the normal progression of immune responses and then how that is changed once infection or inflammation is introduced at a specific gestational age, because that's going to be different as you move along, right? Every day, we're talking about every day, it's the same for that response. I think that's my hypothesis anyway. um and so that's where the idea came, like, how can we generate some sort of just atlas, some baseline idea of, what's happening? How do things how does the response change as gestation progresses? And how can we use that to inform these decisions, these questions that were asked? And then also, how can we use that to understand, okay, this is the environment this baby came from. Now does that give us the opportunity to more personalized care for that baby so that we can impact outcomes at that point? So yeah, that's, I think, probably how what gets me excited and what I'm thinking about a lot right now is that, 'cause that it's every day. Every time I go to the NICU, it's that, right? And I work on the tiny baby team, which is so that's like my whole life is this, like, was the timing right? Could we have known something different? Could we have done something different on the front end before they were born,
So what's your
to
vision?
be prepared?
I'm, like, really on the edge of my seat. What like, so
Yeah.
imagine all of the experiments work. What
Yeah.
would be your vision for the way that we would monitor a pregnancy and then d decide on delivering time based on the parameters?
I mean, the ideal situation would be to identify either some easily accessible cells, how they're changing, or easily accessible biomarkers, that, whether that's maternal serum, whether that's from placental fluid, whether that's from cord blood, like something that would give us an idea of what was happening in at that moment. And then be able to correlate that to what we know is happening in gestation at that time so that we can understand how to change our decisions about delivering. Like, is this if we had some sort of marker that could tell us, like, this at this gestational age, this intrauterine system, mom and baby, can tolerate XYZ, but we are past that. We've tripped the cord. So now we need to deliver now. We don't need to wait because this is not going to end up in a better outcome.
You have
Um
ideas about cells or biomarkers you'd be interested in that you can
yeah.
you might
I
not.
mean,
You might
I
be
don't yet. I'm just gonna be completely
with
honest.
your tech transfer team about patenting, which is fine. But, but if you were earlier, maybe you can just speculate or
Yeah, I mean, right now we're like thinking a lot about innate immunity. That comes from the fact that that's my mentor's expertise too, and that is sort of what my expertise is developing in. And so I think there's actually a really big underappreciated um chance to help mold the innate immunity, specifically in the intrauterine space, because it is so, like, tissue it's its own environment. It's very tissue specific, right? We have this transient organ, the placenta, that is only there during pregnancy with specialized cells, contributions from both the maternal and fetal side that we know very little about and are just starting to really understand, how those cells interact. Even being able to identify the cells themselves has really just started to emerge in the last couple of years. And so I really think that thinking about the intrauterine innate immune system, we have the potential to um quickly change the environment too. That's a system that responds very quickly. It's very plastic as opposed to waiting for T cells and waiting for B cells and antibodies and that kind of thing. So I think it's in the innate immune system. That's my prediction. Although we're looking at all the cells in there right now. Um, Biomarkers is tricky. I don't think it's going to be one. I think it's going to be a combination. And I think that's to be determined.
yeah, I guess also to throw another um, factor in the mix is that, I want to point to the work of Sarah Teichmann, in the UK and in our
Mhm.
neonatology community, Lisa Kornikova. How do you say it, Ben?
Konikova, I believe,
Konnikova.
but
Yeah, we'll edit all this out, but, you know, eh, and Lisa Kornikova, who, are pointing out that the immune system, it's not only responding to infection, right? It has a
Mhm.
morphogenic role.
Yes.
So I think we have a recent story, that hopefully will be deposited in bioRxiv soon. We sent it, to a journal a couple weeks ago
Okay.
that's also looking at the role of immune cells in the developing human brain, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. There's a placental brain connection, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Macrophages specifically, but yeah.
yeah. I think it's also like I'm thrilled to hear that you're working on this because I think we need to understand what is the normal
Mhm.
immune slash inflammatory. I say that cautiously because
Yeah,
inflammation seems to mean negative things, but there
but not
is
necessarily.
there's some
Mhm.
activation maybe of the immune system that's
Mhm.
clearly important for
Mhm.
shaping developmental programs
Yeah.
that we're just starting to get a handle on, and that I think is really critical to understand when we think about influencing the immune system
Yeah.
for, like,
Out
to
improved outcomes, yeah.
yes, thank you
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
yeah, I
Absolutely.
think there are so many unique aspects of the neonatal immune system compared to a more mature, well-studied, older immune system. Like one of my favorite examples is that T cells in infants make a lot of IL-8, which is a neutrophil chemotactic protein, but they don't make it in older children and adults. It's more of a uniquely neonatal process that ties T cells in much closer to innate immunity in the fetus and the infant than it may be in an older individual that is waiting for that adaptive response to evolve. The responses are also much quicker of T cells in infants. And so there is not only like an understanding of what's happening, like it's just exactly what you said, of what's happening in pathologic conditions, but what's happening in regular conditions. It may be a different network than what we expect from studies in mice or older adults.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a lot of fun. Um, you know, I I think, we wanna focus a little bit on your recent studies, and, you talked about, I think, something that's useful for our audience is the transition, how you went recently from Vanderbilt University to Indiana, and to give you an opportunity to, focus on, like, recalibrating in a new institution and what your lessons learned are and how that's influencing, the way you're thinking about the next 5-ish years.
Yeah. So, you know, I met Betsy at the PSDP, through the
I guess we
PSDP,
should talk
which
a little bit
is
about that, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Maybe, we've talked about your challenges, but you've had a lot of wins. Also,
Yeah, yeah,
talked about the
yeah.
PSP and the K and
Yeah.
there's
Oh, yeah.
so
Yeah, there's that, yeah. Yeah, so I had, a really great opportunity presented to me actually by, one of the, neonatologists at Vanderbilt, Jen Sucre, when I joined a fellowship and I had expressed an interest in, making science my career. She said, "Oh, no, you have to do this program." And I was like, "I don't even know what you're talking about." I was like, "I'm sort of trying to find a mentor, like, let's slow down." But she introduced me to the program. I applied and was thankfully accepted into the PSCP, which was an amazing opportunity. In fact, is where I met Wade Clapp, who I will say I have to add to that list of mentors because from the day I met him, he has been one of the most supportive people that I have met, and interacted with and had the privilege of working for. Um, but, um, so did the PSDP. What was really fun about that is that as a neonatologist, you, extend fellowship for a year and through the PSDP, to be able to have a year of 100% protected, time in the lab. And, so you sort or 2 years really. So you sort of shorten your clinical fellowship, at least that's how it worked at Vanderbilt, into like you squish it in 2 years and then you get time after that. Um, so that for me was right around 2020 when all of that should have been happening. And obviously we all know what happened in 2020. COVID hit, and that definitely threw a wrench in everybody's plans for when it came to research. Um, but I I we all persevered through that. Everybody sort of had to deal with that. There's really not much else to say about that. Yeah. And so, but was able to at least like spend the time besides being a first grade teacher, to my daughter, really thinking through and starting to develop that I traumatized us both, but anyway, develop, what I thought would be an interesting program with Dave. Um, and, um, and, use that time to sort of plan the next several years. Um, Shortly after that, my Dave, was announced to be the department chair of medicine at IU. And so he made the transition. He was coming back home, so great transition for him. And Dave is fantastic, so it was like a no brainer that he would be asked to do that. And so my husband and I, really also just life sort of takes over. Our parents, both our sets of parents are getting older and we're starting to become more involved in their, lives and family needs. And his family's in Illinois, my family's in Ohio. And, my mentor came to Indiana. That would put us directly smack dab in the middle of both of our sets of families. My kids were really excited about being closer to family and spending time with their cousins and their grandparents. And so it just sort of worked out that that it was just sort of time to make a move. And I had met Wade through the PSCP, and so that relationship is really already established. In fact, right before we started to realize it was time to probably make a move, Laura Hainline, the division chief, had reached out to me, I think, after talking to Wade about, physician scientists that were finishing the PSCP about coming to do an interview. So I did an interview. It just like the timing was crazy. Like as soon as we were ready to go, she reached out for an interview. It did take a couple of years just trying to work out my husband's job and the logistics of moving, but as these things go. But making the move has been really just a dream. The support at Indiana University is unmatched, really. Um, and that's from the, dean, department chairs, division chiefs, the resources that are available. I honestly feel like Indiana is this gem, this like unsung hero gem in science. I really didn't know a lot about IU. But it is one of the most powerful research institutions in the country, and you wouldn't know that. There's so many brilliant minds here. There's a lot of resources here. There's so much collaboration here. Like the second I interviewed, I made connections here that continued, but while before I even came. And that was outside of just the fact that Dave was my mentor. That was just through the division of neonatology. And so really that has allowed me to because after COVID and Dave leaving, that we all sort of that was one of those times when I was like, "Is this going to work out?" I don't know. Because I think around that time I pushed back submitting my K because he had left and just needing to figure things out. But everything sort of worked out. At least I went ahead and applied for the K, moved a year, but K got funded on the first try, moved a year later, came to IU, and it's just been like the most phenomenal place to be. I was having trouble doing some of the single cell RNA sequencing that I wanted to do before, and coming here is just sort of manifesting itself. It's been, just a lot smoother, and yeah, I really can't say enough about my experience at IU so far. It's been great.
That's
That's
awesome.
amazing to hear. Yeah. That's
I also
as
can't wait to
someone
see your
who's
clinical data.
what's that?
It's coming. We are so close.
Yeah, what's
Yeah.
your timeline this summer?
Oh yeah. Absolutely, yeah, like, samples at the core right now. And, we have the, person who's gonna be doing all the coding because I cannot code, sadly, but who's doing all the coding, like, ready. He's waiting.
No.
It's, like, ready right now, give it to me. So,
I think,
yeah.
that's a good lesson too, that I try to, help the folks in my lab figure out, which is like, what's your passion? What do you
Mhm,
what are the experiments that you want to do? And what are the
mhm,
experiments where it's important that you have competency in them, but after you get the gist of it, how can we, help you?
mhm.
And it's really interesting. Like some of my folks are like, please give me all the coding. Um, I had this undergrad who actually worked in my lab, and she was phenomenal. She took the spatial transcriptomics data set and figured out the QC and had the first results in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I told her, "You're doing an excellent job. Do you wanna come back next summer and like, get your hands wet in the lab?" And she said, "No, thank you. I like coding."
Yeah, you're like, "Oh, ooey."
Perfect.
Yeah.
You're right. No,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's okay, you know what you're gonna do, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so
yeah,
that was a good story,
yeah.
and it sounds like you're the person who likes to get her hands wet.
Yes, I am, and found the person who likes to code because at some point earlier in my career, I thought, "Oh, that's something I should learn to do and figure out," and very quickly realize why that is someone's whole entire job.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was reading about vibe coding recently, and, like, it works a little bit. Like, if you want
Mhm.
a quick answer, you can vibe code and, like, get your, feature plot, but it's not what you should publish.
Yeah, right,
Code
exactly.
for the public.
Yeah. I feel like I've done enough to understand where there may be hiccups or problems
Mhm.
or,
What
you can get back anything, right? But understanding enough to be able to think through, is this meaningful? Does this data make sense, right? I think I've done enough to do that, and that's where I'm signing off. I'm tapping out.
yeah.
Yeah.
The project recently where I, looked at the UMAP and just told them, like, "I'm not gonna look at your code, but something's wrong."
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, that doesn't make sense that the
Mhm.
cells are distributed in that way. S
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Well, should we wrap up?
Yeah. It's been amazing. I loved this.
Yeah, it's always so the scheduling is really hard.
Always, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
and then the experience of doing the interview is like, "I love this job, let me."
Yeah. Yeah, this is wonderful. I
Yeah.
would love to yeah, this is awesome.
Ben,
Yeah,
do you
it's
wanna
like
wrap
you're
up with a, like, we like to close with something fun?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Or whatever else you were gonna say.
no, I was gonna say I feel personally inspired after hearing your story and what gets you excited. So, thank you for
Awesome.
sharing.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
and yeah, I guess it is podcast custom to go over something fun about you, which I'm sure there are many things to talk about, but something fun that you would like to share to get bring more of who you are besides just a doctor and a scientist
Yeah.
um, that you are passionate about in your
Yeah.
life.
So I'm what my husband has coined a promiscuous crafter. Um There's not a craft, that my daughter and I have not tried. In fact, I'm doing this podcast from my craft room,
Oh
because that
yeah,
is what
Your background like that
yeah.
yeah, look at that,
yes.
we got yeah.
Yeah.
We have a little yarn room over there. We love it. It is, like, the best time we have together is, like, trying out a new craft. The number of unfinished projects doesn't matter, that's not the point, it's the experience that count. I knitted this shawl. Yeah.
Oh
Ye
wow. Oh,
yeah.
that's legit. Okay,
Yeah, yep, so crafting is my thing, I
multi-talented
love it.
crafter.
I love it. I love the right, I feel like it makes sense. The tedium of those types of things just sort of matches that science personality, right? Like, it's what we do. The things that
Oh my
take one
gosh.
stitch at a time to knit an
I
entire
know.
garment, right? It's what we do.
You you have to have that crazy long-term dedication to
Yes.
actually succeed in something like
Yeah,
knitting. So,
exactly.
I
And just
get
like the
that.
lab, lots of unfinished projects too.
Yeah. And the creativity also, I think is,
Yeah.
very on brand. So,
Yeah.
like that that follows too. What,
Yeah.
your shawl's super cool. And any other projects you wanna tell us about that you're proud of?
Ooh. Let's see. My daughter and I, like, designed this diamond painting, and it's like basically, you just pixelate a picture, but it's like this big picture of our family at Christmas, that is taking us, like, a long time to finish, but it's so exciting, to get to do that with her, so I love it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
everything.
Yeah.
of course.
Your crafting passions, your scientific
Yeah,
journey,
yeah,
your scientific interests that, I think we're all, delighted with your journey so far and very excited to, capture the like immune repertoire um
yeah,
atlas that you're working on. So
yeah,
please share it with us.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm very excited to see that data
Yeah,
as
me too.
well.
It's coming. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks to all our listeners too. Thanks for hanging out with us at the bench, and we'll see you soon.